Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Urban Legends video. Well, I hope everyone had a great Christmas. Thank you so much everyone for your kind messages, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you all as well. Hope everybody got the presents y'all wished for, and in return were able to give presents to others. I always like Christmas. It's always one of the best times of the year, so happy thoughts to everyone. And as a special treat, I thought I would give everyone probably the most requested urban legend in most, I guess, recent videos. This one has been requested multiple times, and in this case, I think the reason why I didn't really pick it before was because there's a lot of information to talk about. So what I might end up doing is I'll probably put this as a one-part video, and then I'll do the second part here later on, so that way it'll be split in two, so that way it won't all just be just one long entire video. So in this case, the urban legend that I'm talking about is known as the Dyatlov Pass, and that was an incident that occurred in 1959, and it was a incident that as of to this day remains just as mysterious as when it first happened. Again, this urban legend is called the Dyatlov Pass incident, and it occurred there in Russia. So with regards to this urban legend, thank you for your suggestions. I'll go ahead and I'll start the information here, and also what I'll do is I'll include a link to one of the best articles I read on the information for this urban legend, so check it out. Again, there's a lot of info to cover, so if you really wanted to get the full details, check out the link below, and you'll be able to, separate some time for yourself, because it might be a while, but you can see a pretty good recounting of everything associated with this urban legend. By the way, what's the reason why I also picked this urban legend is because this was real. Like, this actually happened. There are photographs. There are real people. Unlike some of the other urban legends, and in some cases the cryptids and monsters that I've chronicled, a lot of it is like hearsay, a friend of a friend type of thing, where someone that they knew heard it from someone that they knew. But no, in this case, this was 100% real, down to the point that there was an official investigation into what happened by the Russian government. So it doesn't get any more real than that. One thing I want to note though is I'm not going to include photographs of the actual deceased party. Apparently there are, and I found some photographs where people took photos of the cadavers or the corpses, and I'm not going to include them here simply because they don't, it just doesn't seem right, and at the same time they are pretty graphic, so I didn't want to include them. But if you wanted to, it's out there. You'll be able to find that info. So the Dyatlov Pass incident, what was it? Well, it was an event that occurred in Russia. It was at a place called the Ural Mountains, and the most commonly cited date is the February 2nd, 1959. So again, not too far back, not like some of the other urban legends that I've talked about where it's, centuries back when it comes to some of these incidences. No, this was in 1959, to the point where, as you'll see some of the images here, it was in an era where cameras were abundantly around, and that provided some of the best evidence of the recording of this incident, both before it happened, not during the actual incident, and then afterward. It's that not during part that is key, because so much of the mystery surrounding this incident has to do with what caused it. There's no actual evidence of what caused it, but there's only assumptions and theories and speculations as to what essentially caused this incident. And here's what it is in a nutshell. It was a group of young men and women who went together, 10 skiers in fact, that on January 25th, 1959, they went together to try to do like an excursion of sorts into those mountains. It was at a mountain place where apparently they were going to get together. They were going to do an excursion to try to get familiar with the area, because eventually they were going to go on yet another excursion afterward, one that would be a little bit more difficult. So this would be a way for these 10 people to get the hang of it. And the 10 people consisted of 1 ski instructor, 3 engineers, and then 7 students from a school called the Ural Polytechnic Institute. And they all gathered on board. and they went on this excursion. And again, the key date was January 25th, 1959. Now, the apparent leader of this group was a 23-year-old who went by the name of Igor Dyatlov. That's why this is called the Dyatlov Pass incident. It's named after him, mainly because by de facto reasons he was the leader of the group, and so that's why the name took on his last name. And he was the person that was in charge of the group and of leading the expedition, and he got them all on board. One thing though to note, and this is actually very much a stroke of luck, there was going to be one more member of the group, and it was going to be a guy by the name of Yuri Yudin. And I think that's a picture of him here on this, like the one with the backpack. He had stated he's actually the only surviving member of the group. And the reason for it is because he had stated that he actually fell ill. And it was by pure dumb luck that he's still alive, because right before the expedition was supposed to start on that date, because he fell ill, he was forced to stay behind. And so some of these pictures are of him essentially saying goodbye to the group and wishing them well. And little did he know that he would have no clue at all, that this would be essentially the last time he ever saw them alive. In fact, one of the last things later on in his life, because he's been interviewed so many times about this incident, again, him being the only surviving member, not of the actual incident, but because of the party itself and who he knew. He was interviewed so many times. He was asked, what could he do if he could change things, or what could he do if he had a chance. And then he said, later on in life, he said, if I had a chance to ask God just one question, it would be, what really happened to my friends that night? That's what the incident is about, by the way. These 10 people, they all went on this excursion, and then they all ended up missing. And then the events that later on were theorized, especially the way they were found, the articles of clothing, the way they were missing, the tent, the shape of the tents, the footprints. In some cases, there's a tree nearby, as if somebody was trying to climb up as quickly as possible. The shocked faces that they had, the radioactivity, all these incidences all lead to the mysteriousness of the Dyatlov Pass incident. But again, this one gentleman, by sheer dumb luck, he was spared that particular incident. So again, the excursion started on January 25th, 1959. It was supposed to originally be for a couple of days at most. In fact, their reported date that they were going to get in contact with their relatives again was going to be February 11th, 1959. So just a couple of weeks later. So the idea was, give it maybe about 2 weeks. They were all going to go on this excursion. And then they were supposed to report back on February 11th, and that way they could say, hey, things went great. Let's go. It was like this. The expedition was perfect. Let's plan on the other one. But of course, February 11th, 1959 came and went, and nobody responded. Nobody got in touch with them. Nobody heard from them, and that's when the search began to see what happened. And that's when they came across all those mysterious things that I just mentioned about a minute or so ago. So this is where the mystery all happened. It all started when the search began for the missing group. Again, 10 people were gone. None of them were reporting to their family members anymore. There were no messages, there were no telegraphs, no letters, nothing. They were gone from the face of the earth. So now an investigation was started, and in fact, what's key to note is that the investigation was not just from the Russian government, but it was also from the Russian military, and then also part of the, Aborigines, the ones that were there in and around that area, natives, in other words, to that winter land. They also helped with the little search that they had to try to find what happened to these team members. And then when they found them, that's where the mystery began. That's where everything is associated with the Dyatlov Pass incident. Here's what happened. There was a search party that started, and apparently one of the key members of the personnel, was a guy by the name of Mikhail Sharavin. He was also a fellow Polytechnic student, and he was the one that kind of led the group, the search mission, to try to find out what occurred. And here's what they first came across. Again, this is one key mysterious item. You'll see that there's a tent, but there's the remnants of the tent. The tent, in fact, was found to be badly damaged, not from the outside, but from the inside. And that's what's so mysterious, is the fact that the tent, it was the way it was discovered. They surmised that whoever was inside the tent at that time was in a position where they couldn't open the tent, whatever the opening was itself, a zipper or any other format. They couldn't open the tent at that time, and so they had to actually tear it open. And in fact, here's how this guy Shadowvan describes it. He says, "We discovered that the tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty, and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left behind." And the tent itself, again, was shredded from the inside out. That's what was so crazy about the finding of the tent, because here, if you had some missing people, you would surmise that the people themselves would try to make sure that they could stay alive, and the best way to do that is for them to stay in a place where they could stay warm and they could stay together, numbers and safety, in other words. But when it comes to this tent, it completely threw that theory out the window, because not only was the tent completely abandoned, but it was destroyed in a manner where if any survivors later tried to go back in and, let's say, try to find cover within the tent, it would not be in a position where it would help anymore. In fact, anybody at that point would have probably found better coverage from the cold within, let's say, a cave or any other type of dwelling that could be made, whether it's natural or whether it's man-made. What's also key to note is, if you haven't guessed it by now, of course, that area there, it was extremely cold. I mean, this is Russia, and this is in the dead of winter. I mean, we're talking again towards late January, early February. So the temperature there is really, really cold. So again, to have the idea that some people that are missing are not found in this tent, that just adds to the craziness of this situation. And then what led them outside the tent only further added to the mystery. It was the fact that they found footprints, not shoe prints, but footprints. Prints actually created by bare feet. Again, why would somebody do this? Why would somebody be in a position where they're running outside the safety of a tent, but not only that, they're running out without any shoes? That's the quickest way to have hypothermia, to be able to freeze to death, is not have anything protecting your feet, since feet are so sensitive to either heat or cold. Having anything as far as no shoes, especially in that severe coldness, it's just the quickest way to have quick death. And in that case, they found multiple footprints. In fact, it was surmised that it was about 8 separate set of footprints that were leading around the tent outside. And it was as if it was the way the tracks were. It was as if the footprints were like they were in a mad dash, like they were running away from something as quickly as possible. In fact, 2 sets of prints. The team there, the investigation, they actually tried to find, these prints where they led them to, and it led them to an area about 1,500 feet away, and you'll see a picture of it here. It was a tree. Now, what stands about this tree to the investigative team was that the branches of the tree up to 15 feet from the ground were completely removed. And in fact, the bottom towards the ground there was the remnants of a fire, like a fire that was built from whatever materials could be found. But the branches up and around the tree, again up to 15 feet, were completely torn off. So that led them to believe either A, this fire was built with those branches, or B, in a more scary type manner, whoever was trying to, let's say, get up the tree couldn't do so, and so they probably had their friend or somebody tried to help them, but no matter which way they did it, because the branches were so weak, then they couldn't get up any further in the tree itself. And you can imagine the situation. Let's say one person got on top of another, like they were resting on the shoulders of the person, holding him up that way. and this person was trying to get up the tree from whatever was trying to attack them, but they couldn't. No matter how much they frantically tried to hold on to branches, the branches were just too weak, and the person was too heavy, and so they were snapping off. And there were also traces of flesh that were found on the tree itself, in and around those branches, as if the person was almost like clawing, trying to climb up the tree. So again, it's either the idea that maybe those branches were torn off to create some kind of fire, or B, they were torn off in a mad dash and escape of someone trying to essentially go up the tree to escape whatever it was that was chasing them, but they just couldn't make it. The creepiest part was that there was no evident animal tracks in and around that area, only the remnants of a fire. So what I'm thinking would happen here was, it was a mixture of both. Like maybe the branches, some of them were started and torn off originally to start the fire, but then the fire attracted something, and so when these people tried to climb up as much as they couldn't get up because of the the branches again being too weak and the person being too heavy, and so that's when they ran off at that point. Now here's the interesting part too. It was near and around this area that the first two bodies were found of the group. They were the bodies, the last names were Doroshenko, and then the other one was, oh man, it's a long one, it's Krivonishchenko, and they were 100% dead corpses, cadavers in other words, and they were found about 900 feet away from the tent, but they were closer to this tree area. So it was surmised that these were the two people that must have been in and around that area of the tree, either building that fire or again trying to escape whatever was trying to attack them. And in fact, also that was found nearby was the leader of the group, Dyatlov. Again, the person that the incident was named after. His body was found about 900 feet away from the location of those two bodies. And in fact, the way his body was found, he had his body, like his back to the ground. One hand had one of those branches, like as if it was a weapon of some sort, not like as his attempt of trying to create a fire, but again the way he had it in his hand, it was as if he had a weapon. And then another one, his head, like his hand was protecting his head as if it was from something trying to attack his head. So again, the way his body was found, he was found on the ground, back to the ground, one hand clutching a branch in a very like protective weapon-like manner, and then the other trying to cover his head from something unknown. Quite creepy. And then also, I forgot to mention this, the two party members that were found, this Doroshenko and then Krivonishchenko, those two guys, or those two people, they were actually found with their clothes missing. Again, I had mentioned that at the beginning, towards the video about some of the mysteriousness surrounding this incident. Their bodies were found naked except for underwear. Why? Why were they found with just underwear? Again, in a place like this where it's almost sub-zero temperatures, why on earth would they not have their clothes on? Instead, it was just that their underwear was on. That would lead to sure quick death, probably within minutes of being out there in the cold. But yet, that's how they were found. And again, with the leader, Dyatlov, found about 900 feet away from them in a rigor mortis type state, where he had a makeshift weapon of sorts, and then at the same time he had like something protective stance over his head with his hand. That it just adds to the uneasiness of the situation. So, by the way, this is probably going to be the end of part 1 of this video. Still so much more to talk about, so be on the lookout for part 2. I'll have it up soon, and then that way you can continue what occurred with this incident. So, alright everybody, thanks again, take care.